In other words, he's not lying. Like one of the hadiths that was fabricated on the Prophet ﷺ is, whoever eats eggplant every day will never be afflicted by diseases. And it's a fabricated hadith that a man who used to sell eggplants in Baghdad started spreading the hadith. And there were people that did that, merchants that would make these things up. So the visions were seen by people who were thiqa, they were sources of trust. And in one of the visions that Yusuf al-Nabahani saw of the Prophet that he mentions in his book Shawahid al-Haq is about Imam al-Ghazali, because he was warning people about saying anything bad about Imam al-Ghazali. He saw the Prophet ﷺ in a vision, and Yusuf al-Nabahani is a thiqa, he's a scholar that we trust. He saw the Prophet ﷺ in this dream, was sitting with all of his companions, and he asked the Prophet ﷺ a question, and the Prophet put his hand ﷺ to his right, and he said, indicating to ask this person, and he looked, and it was Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. That he was pointing to him to answer the question. And Yusuf al-Nabahani said he realized the maqam, or the station that the Imam had with the messenger if he was deferring his answer to the Imam. So you will find this in our tradition, confirmations that people have in their visions about these people. And we don't base hukm on vision. In other words, there's no judgment based in Sharia. You cannot make a hukm based on a vision of the Prophet ﷺ. But visions of the Prophet ﷺ do strengthen the authority. And this is why they're transmitted in the books. People do see visions. And all of our Imams, Al-Aini transmits visions, Imam Nawawi transmits visions. They mention visions as ways of explaining to people the validity of certain positions as a strengthening, not as a hukm, like saying, oh, this is why it's so because of the vision. No, but the vision confirms the hukm. That's all. So in this fatwa, he begins by saying that he considers one of the most important replies that he's given, because Murabtal Haaj in the land of Mauritania is considered a thiqa. People trust his fatwa, and people will send fatwa from far distances because they trust his fatwa. And so this man asked him a question here, and that is, what do you say about people who censure the studying of branches of knowledge without studying the actual sources of the knowledge? In other words, what do you say about somebody who learns the wudu or learns the aqidah without understanding how these ahkam were derived and brought out? Now, just to point, in terms of aqidah generally, the scholars say there's no taqleed. It's haram to make taqleed. If you make taqleed in aqidah, there's a difference of opinion. Some say it's completely unacceptable, and others, like Imam Subki said, it's acceptable if the muqallid's iman was so firm that if the person that he was trusting actually went into ridda, apostated, that the muqallid wouldn't lose his iman. So if somebody taught you tawheed and he was the source of your understanding, and then a'udhu billah, he left the deen, and yet that didn't waver your belief in what you knew, then Imam Subki says that that's a valid iman. But generally they say no, there's no taqleed in iman. You cannot be muqallid in iman. You have to understand iman for yourself. You have to believe in Allah based on your own understanding. Whereas in the furu' of fiqh, you have to have an imam unless you reach that level, and that's what he's going to talk about. So he says, would that he had claimed ijtihad for himself only, and Allah is his reckoner, and abandoned the call of Muslims to leave that which is incumbent upon them. In our reply to such a one, we make mention what the scholars of the methodological basis of Islamic jurisprudence, the usuliyin, and the imams of the jurisprudence themselves has said about such a matter. As for my labeling him a deviant, it is only because he has desired to impose upon common people the precious rank of absolute independent reasoning, about which Muhammad al-Nabigha said, and ijtihad in the land of the Moroccans, the Western Phoenix, has taken flight with it. Muhammad al-Nabigha is a famous Mauritanian scholar, and what he was saying was the Western Phoenix, the Anqa Mughribi, was a bird, mythological bird that they said used to come out of Arabia every 500 years and go to Egypt and would steal like babies and things and then go back. And so it's a mythological bird. What he's saying is the mujtahid comes every 500 years. So ijtihad, the Anqa, the phoenix, came and took ijtihad away, and we just haven't seen it for a long time. So he's saying, I say in reply to the following qualified scholarship, taqleed is an obligation on anyone other than absolute mujtahid. In other words, what he's saying is it's wajib to follow somebody of qualified scholarship that you trust if you are not an absolute mujtahid. And I will make mention of all his necessary prerequisites, inshaAllah. Sidi Abdullah Wad Hajj Ibrahim. And this is a book, by the way, which is taught in Al-Azhar and in Medina University in their section on usul. It's called Maraqi al-Saud. It's 1,001 lines by 1,000 lines, 1,001 lines by Sidi Abdullah Wad Hajj Ibrahim. He said in his Maraqi al-Saud, taqleed is necessary for other than the one who has achieved the rank of absolute ijtihad. Now if you look, there is ranking in ijtihad. The first and highest rank is called mujtahid mutlaq. I don't have a board, but the first and highest ranking is called mujtahid mutlaq. A mujtahid mutlaq, when we talk about ijtihad, what ijtihad means is anything other than what there is a absolute proof for. Qat'i. Qat'i means it's a decisive proof and there's no debate about it. When there is a qat'i proof for something, there is absolutely no room for ijtihad. Ijtihad comes when you have some ambiguity or there's something equivocal in the statement that the legal ruling is coming from and the imams differ on it. At that point you move into ijtihad. Who is capable of making ijtihad? Now the vast majority of rulings in Islam are ijtihadi rulings. Now why would that be? Why would Allah make the vast majority of rulings in our deen from ijtihad? Why? Why do you think? What's that? Not really, because ijtihad can be a fixed thing. I mean, ijtihad does have that element of change, but the vast majority of ijtihadi rulings are not. They don't change. They're the same. Okay, I think there's something there that you have different cultures and different understandings. But what ultimately is ijtihad? What is the actual process of it? What is ijtihad? What's the root word? Jihad, right? That's the root word. So why would Allah make ijtihad the vast majority of legal rulings coming out of ijtihad? It's لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ نَنْزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. We sent this down as an Arabic Quran to force you to use your intellects. And the nature of Arabic is that it is an equivocal language. I mean, the Arabs have a whole science of tawriyah. They have a whole science of literally saying one thing that has possible different meanings. The language is filled with it. It's filled with ways of saying something that have completely different meanings. What it does is it forces you to exhaust your intellectual powers. And the most essential rhetorical element in the Arabic language is ellipsis. It's constantly not finishing a full thought. In other words, it leaves it to where the person listening is forced to finish the thought, to finish the understanding. The Quran is filled with that, and that's why so many tafsirs there's brackets that are filling in the lacunae. The thinking, the process is filled in by these lacunae, right? So that's why ijtihad is to force us to think. Now, not everybody can think at that level. It's just a fact of life. Not everybody is capable of thinking at the highest level, right? Because Allah has created a creation of varying understanding. There's tafawut. There's difference in understanding. So he says, so the first one is mujtahid mutlaq, which is an absolute mujtahid. He is the one who's able to make ijtihad. And the next one is called mujtahid muqayyad. Mujtahid muqayyad. Mujtahid muqayyad is somebody who has limited analogical reasoning abilities because of knowledge limitations. In other words, his knowledge is limited, so he cannot make absolute ijtihad. And these people are forced to follow the methodological practices of the mujtahidun and muttaqun. In other words, what the mujtahid does is he shows you how he does his ijtihad. So it's like he gives you an ABC, like a logarithm of how he arrived. And the different Imam, Abu Hanifa has a different logarithm